So let's go to the next question, which is from Ian A. Little. What is it about Obama that makes him so perpetually likable to people on the left? I've known many people who have strong negative feelings towards Hillary and other Dems, but still hold up Obama as some kind of exalted statesman, some actually thinking that he's the best president of the modern age. Is Obama's glamour just so great that it eclipses all of the failures and scandals in his time to the left? And on a related note, do you think the Dems will be running Cory Booker as Obama clone in 2020? The great, you got the whole question in the first sentence there, Ian. What is it about Obama that makes him so perpetually likable to people on the left? You know, when he was elected in 2008, many people referred to him as the Messiah. Oprah did, and a bunch of other people. And you can remember all of those pictures of him photographed in such a way that he had a halo. And even from the beginning of his administration, I mean, the first couple weeks, a lot of us were thinking, this is not politics. This is more like religion. So to answer your question, Ian, the reason they still feel good about him is because he is, in fact, their Messiah. He is their Messiah. These are people who have no real understanding of how the world works. We did a right angle show. I did one. It's not out yet, but it's coming out in the next day or two, on this business of these gun control people in New York City made an announcement. They've got a real step, finally, in controlling gun violence and reducing the murder rates in America's cities, because these people have seen to it through just endless nagging that Apple has removed the pistol emoji. If you're not familiar with emojis, when you text somebody, there's a little smiley face and it opens up hundreds of tiny little pictures that you can send for accent. It used to be just send you 2 dots and a parentheses for a smile. Well, now there's hundreds of these things. And one of them was a pistol, revolver, looked like a .38 to me. And they have replaced that now with a water gun, with a water pistol. So now that the pistol emoji, the .38 revolver, has been removed from the iPhones, I think we can begin to see the murder rate fall just precipitously as more and more and more of these people who've been committing these murders realize that murdering people is wrong and that it's a violation of their fundamental human dignity. And by the way, maybe they'll start reading about gun-free zones. That emoji story, because they're very proud of it, they were very, very proud of it, is connected to Obama in this way. It feels like an achievement, but it's just fantasy, and it's quite obvious fantasy. Ian, he is the Messiah for them in every way. So what do I mean by that? He's articulate when his teleprompter's articulate. Mine's articulate too. But I can do this for 3 hours off prompter, and I don't think I've ever heard him say anything that was off prompter that didn't sound like a stuttering idiot. And nothing against stuttering idiots. I didn't mean to insult you. So he represents everything that the left thinks that they are about, everything that they think they're champions of. They consider themselves to be the champions of civil rights, and it's the Democrats who've done so much for Black America. They have done a lot for Black America. They've committed Black America back to the plantation of vote plantation that they're on, and we simply don't have any way to measure how much worse race relations are now than they were before this Messiah light worker came down. But Ian, he represents everything that they want to believe in. He represents the idea that glamour is more important than toughness. He represents the idea that being able to speak well is more important than being able to think well. He's everything that they want. He's John F. Kennedy plus Martin Luther King rolled into one. He's a young president, and he's hip, and he's got a big smile, and he does the Ellen Show, and he does his little dance, and all the rest of it. So he is really a pop culture president, and all of the pop culture fell in love with him. I'm part of the pop culture. I didn't fall in love with him. I gave him a chance, but he didn't last very long. So when you ask the question, there's really two parts to the question. On the one hand, they love him because he makes so much of their wish fulfillment come true. That's a good place to go to for a minute. I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but not for a while. Wishful thinking is the kind of thing where, hey, you know what? It might go well. Maybe this thing will really break out, and who knows? Maybe we'll make a ton of money, or whatever wishful thinking is. It's kind of a wishful thinking is just sort of whistling a tune in your head and thinking, well, It's possible that these things could go very well. But they don't do wishful thinking, the progressives on the left. It's magical thinking. Magical thinking is very different. Magical thinking means that you can, in fact, think that something's going to happen if you want it badly enough. You just wish it into existence. And they have done that with him. He's scandal-free. What they mean by scandal-free is they haven't caught him in bed with anybody else yet. That's what they mean by scandal-free. I don't know where to start with this stuff. It's so obvious, Ian, but he's the president of the United States, so every scandal that involves the government is pretty much his scandal. I mean, let's take Fast and Furious, we're going to give lots and lots and lots of powerful semi-automatic weapons to drug dealers in Mexico. What could possibly go wrong? Well, turns out a lot could go wrong, and a lot of people were killed, and a couple American border people were killed. And Obama said, I just found out about it now on the news. Really? Well, your Justice Department has been running this thing for a year now. So there's that. Look, we just do this all day, but the big golden one that nobody talks about, and just nobody talks about, is that, yes, Hillary Clinton catastrophically compromised our national security by having a private server. Absolutely true. And she cannot be trusted with national secrets and shouldn't be. And as it turns out, wasn't. But who do you think she was emailing from that private server? She wasn't ordering Domino's, at least not exclusively anyway. She was talking to the president on an unsecure server about State Department business, and everything about the emails and the national security leaks has been connected to Hillary Clinton because it's her server, but she spoke to the entire government up to and including the President of the United States of America. Whatever her handle was, HRC, 56 at, clintonfoundation.org, Barack Obama sent and received emails from that address. And anytime he conducted state business, anything regarding the job, and I don't think that Barack Obama and Hillary talk an awful lot socially in terms of, getting together and having a fun weekend. Anytime that Barack Obama spoke business with Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State on any server that's not .gov, it's a crime. It's a felony crime. You've committed a crime by doing this. All records must be returned at the end of your tenure, period. It's a felony. And if you try to destroy them, it's another felony, and that one's punishable by never being able to work in the federal government again. And people are saying, well, that might not be constitutional. Well, then you should have decided if it's constitutional enough before you made the law. Sounds like a reasonable law to me. If it turns out that you're just cavalier with these secrets that not only cost us security and money and soldiers, it costs actual lives. People die as a result of this. People have died because of her laxity, and more are going to die. Actual people with real names. So Barack Obama was part of that. Barack Obama was Benghazi. He was standing there watching Benghazi happen on television screens. And he is the president. Somebody told the rescue helicopters to stand down. And it wasn't stand down in kind of like the movie kind of way, like stand down, soldier. It was a genuine stand down order. Helicopters were up, rotors were at operational RPM. The guys were ready to go. They were fueled, they were loaded, they were in the helicopters ready to go when somebody said, no, you're not going. It's not like they sat there waiting for an order to go rescue them that never arrived. That alone would be pretty awful, very awful. It's much worse than that. These people who were going to go and rescue our ambassador and those three other brave men, they were in the vehicle ready to go. And they said, no, turn it off. Go back to your barracks. First of all, what does that say? Forget about just those 10 operators or 8 or whatever, a crew of one helicopter. There were more than that, undoubtedly. There's probably 50, 60 people involved. But forget about what it says to them, because we know what it says to them. We know that many of these brave, tough men went inside and cried over this because of frustration, not out of fear or sadness, out of just sheer raw frustration that the thing that they've trained their entire lives to do, which is go out and save American lives, has had the rug pulled out from it because of a president's got an election coming up. But what signal does it send to the rest of the military when we don't go? What does it send to the rest of the people in the State Department? What does it tell our CIA people who are overseas? What does it tell anybody who works for this government in any fashion whatsoever overseas? What does it say when we don't send the rescue helicopters? It says that as long as things are cool, we're cool. But if you get into trouble, you're on your own. That's pretty much it. I'll tell you a quick little story that I heard from the source, which is, for me, kind of like sitting at the base of Mount Olympus and having Zeus throw lightning bolts right at you. Most of you know by now I've got to be pretty good friends with Burt Rutan, and much later, just 2 summers ago, did I get to meet Dick Rutan, who was the first man to fly around the world in Voyager 1 unrefueled. Dick has got all kinds of records for, he flew the Easy Rocket. He's one of these, Dick Rutan is one of these absolutely golden aviators. He's just a fighter pilot. He flew F-100s in Vietnam. I think his call sign was Killer. I'm not sure. Killer or Shooter, something like that. Something awesome. And as we know here from your friend Skid, these names are usually designed to be kind of poking fun at you. So if somebody's call sign is Killer, you got to figure that's a pretty good guy. So here's what basically happened. Dick Rutan was flying a combat mission in Vietnam. Somebody went down. A pilot had to eject, and he ejected down into the canopy of the jungle. And they got him. The pilot who's ejected is on his little personal radio, and he's giving him the location, and they're going to come and rescue him. And that's what you do. So they send the rescue helicopters out, and Dick is up there flying top cover up high. Well, probably not that high, 6,000, 7,000, something like that. Just making sure that everything's cool. The rescue helicopters go in. They start taking pretty heavy ground fire, and then so the rescue helicopters come out. And Dick said, well, what are we going to do? Well, how are we going to soften it up first? And they said, no, we're not going to go in. It's too risky. We're not going to go after that guy. And Dick Rutan on the radio said, what? So we're not going to rescue him. We're going to call the rescue attempt off. And Dick Rutan said, all right, but you call the goddamn general who made that order, and you ask him what I'm supposed to say to this guy. You ask him what I'm supposed to tell this fellow aviator who's risked his life for his country. You tell me, have that general who made the decision say the words that I'm going to say to this guy who's down in the canopy, because I think this is just utter bullshit. That's it. And when Dick started telling the story, he was about as mad as he was when it actually happened to him. But then he went on to the real coda, you know. He basically said, look, we have a deal. It's true for pilots, and I'm sure it's true for everybody else, certainly true for fighter pilots. We have a deal, and here's the deal. I'm going to go out there and risk my life every day on your orders, and I'm going to go places that you tell me to, and it's going to be dangerous. So the deal is, I'm willing to do this for you, but in exchange for this, if I get in trouble, if I'm killed, I'm killed. But if I'm captured or caught or about to be captured and caught, I expect you to do everything within your power to get me out of there. That's the deal. That's the deal. And I think on some level, every single person who joins the military understands this, and certainly the combat troops do, and most especially the special forces guys do. They know that if they get in trouble, we're going to come. And we're going to come shooting. And it doesn't matter if we get there in time or not. Obviously, it matters to those people on the ground, obviously. But it doesn't matter. What matters is you go. What matters is you live up to your end of the bargain. What matters is you basically say, look, the math doesn't make any sense, and this is why the left is the left, right? Because everything for them is a political equation. Barack Obama had an election coming up, and he justified it, no doubt, by saying, we're just going to lose another 10 guys. And they wouldn't have gotten there in time. Well, how do you know? Turns out these guys fought for 6 hours. How do you know? They would have gotten there in time, as a matter of fact. And here's the calculation that people on the left do, people who don't understand anything about the military at all. They basically say, hey, look, if it was easy or even moderately easy to go in there and get them out, we'd get them out. But if we try to get this one guy out, we may lose 10 guys or 15, 20 guys may be killed trying to get him out. And my response to that is, okay, how many guys do we have to kill in order to get him out? What is it going to take to get this individual back? Because he's a priceless individual, and the people that sign up for the military would rather die rescuing a pilot, I think, than be told to go home. And I know this is true. because he told me about a helicopter pilot who volunteered for it. We basically just went out and started it up and flew out there. And he hovered low over the canopy, and he was taking all kinds of rounds. And he had a rope down, and he could see the downed pilot down there. And he sees the pilot grab the basket, basically. He's about to come up. And he gets a little bit off the ground. I may be mangling this just a little bit, but this is the guts of it. And they're about to extract him, and by now the helicopter is taking so many hits, it's just a sieve. And the guy down on the ground, the down pilot, is saying, "Cut me loose, cut me loose, cut me loose." And it sounds so heroic. And they got back, they got him out, got back to base, and he's in the hospital recovering and all the rest of it. And somebody said, "Hey man, it was really brave of you to say, 'cut me loose,' it's really pretty cool." The guy said, "I didn't do it to be a hero. I did it because so many pieces of the helicopter were coming down and landing on me. I thought I was going to be killed. I thought either one of these big chunks that they just shot off is going to kill me, or the helicopter is going to come down on top of me. That's why I said, 'cut me loose.'" So there you go. Yeah. So this is it's a kind of a long run way to say scandal free. He's responsible for all the scandals, and I think probably of all the scandals that he's most responsible for, I think I would say the biggest scandal of Barack Obama is his unwillingness to face any consequences at all whatsoever. He will not face the consequences. I'm not asking him to admit he was wrong, but I am asking him to say he's responsible. When he says that, "I found out about the IRS weaponized against conservatives. I found out about it on the news." What about Fast and Furious? "Yeah, I just heard about that from a newspaper." What about Benghazi? "Yeah, well, it was based on a movie or something." It's just perpetually lying because he will not take responsibility. He is, as we've said from day one, and my God, this is it. This is the last time I'm going to say this on the Stratosphere Lounge while he's president. I don't think he's going anywhere, by the way. I think he's going to stick around and make sure he doesn't get completely washed off the stage. And the more he does that, the better I like it, because he's just going to trash himself even further. But he is a pathological narcissist. And that means that it's one thing to be a narcissist, and I ought to know. But to be a pathological narcissist means that that you are incapable. That's the pathological part. You are incapable of it. You just don't have it. And Barack Obama has never had to accept responsibility for anything. As a matter of fact, if you look at his entire life and career, Barack Obama's career consists of taking credit for things that he hasn't done and then learning how to be quiet about it. One of the strange little tiny breakthroughs thoughts that I had, it's one of these little things that don't have a whole lot of significance but tickle me quite a bit, was I was wondering about the big, just a giant paradox that I couldn't figure out. He's made the president of the Harvard Law Review. My contention is that he doesn't deserve to be president of the Harvard Law Review because he's not that smart. But Harvard makes him the president of the Law Review. Now they've got a young black man who's the head of the Harvard Law Department. Look at how virtuous Harvard Law School is. But the part I couldn't fathom, I could understand why they want him for a figurehead. The part I couldn't fathom was why didn't they publish any of his legal briefs? He didn't do a single legal review, not one. During the entire time he was president of the Law Review. That's a president's job. He was chosen because he's the best legal mind, and his job is to make these reviews. But Obama never had one published, not ever. And I was saying to myself, why? Was he so busy doing the PR? Was he out there doing something? And then it just hit me like it was so obvious to me. Of course he wrote reviews. Of course he did. They were unpublishable. He wrote law reviews as the president of Harvard Law, and the reason that none of them were published, and you can't find one of them today, is not because they weren't done, in my opinion, I'm guessing here, but because they were so obviously subpar that anybody reading it would realize what Harvard has done and why. If somebody says that he's the greatest president of the last 50 years or anything, just ask him what he's accomplished. We can do this very quickly. What has he accomplished? The only thing that he's accomplished politically is Obamacare. That's the only thing he's done. Obamacare has fallen apart before he even leaves office. It's disintegrating. Everybody in the country had their insurance rates triple and their deductibles go up by a factor of 10. So that's his actual legacy. What else is it? What else has he accomplished? I could just wait. What else has he accomplished? Are we stronger internationally than we were before? No. People used to laugh behind our backs. Now they laugh right in our faces. Is the Middle East more secure? No. The Middle East was actually secure when he came into the building, but now it's a bigger mess than it's ever been. Is our military stronger than it was? Our military is noticeably degraded. And forget about the lack of hardware, because when we think about the military, we think about spending, we think about aircraft carriers and buying jets and all the rest of it, and there's plenty of that boondoggle going on too. But the main thing he's done to irreparably damage the military is he's issued a series of executive commands as commander-in-chief that have made it not only unpleasant but untenable for warriors to remain in the military. He's made it so inconsistent with their personal honor that huge numbers of people who would have retired much later just got out. They got out because they couldn't take it. They couldn't take it. I told you the story about this guy who was commanding a Green Beret regiment. I want to say it was a regiment, and he said one day he was supposed to be training his men. They said, no training for you. You got to come in here. And today, instead of going out there and training these guys, you have to ask them if they have any firearms at home, and if so, what kind and how many. And this major just looked up and said, sir, I refuse to obey that order. I'm not going to obey it. And when you make a statement like that, you realize that means your career is over. It's pretty much over. It turns out that it got overlooked, but he didn't stay much longer after that. He didn't stay. He just decided to leave as soon as he can. And I hear this all the time. I read stories from chief petty officers who say that, liberty used to be liberty because it was liberty. You could go, you spend 6 months in a steel, tub out there under water or under the water line anyway. 6 months. And finally you pull into Singapore or Hong Kong, or you pull into someplace like that, and you want to have some time off. But you can't do that anymore. It's not like, we've just docked. You guys can take off now. It's Thursday night at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, and the ship sails on Monday morning at 0600, so you better be here. And what you do between those two things was nobody else's business. That's why, drunk as a drunken sailor means something, because these people had to party enough to get them through the next 6 months of being sequestered from the rest of humanity. Now we find out, I think this is a bigger embarrassment than the F-35 program. It's not more expensive, but it's bigger. Now we find out that these grown men who've agreed, and women, who've agreed to risk their lives for this country are not going to be treated like adults. They don't have, sorry to interrupt, but it might have been a battalion, as our friend Wild Goose is pointing out. If he was a major, he's probably commanding a battalion. Anyway, I like to get that right even if I don't get it right. So what happened, he said, is now there is a list of pre-approved places where we can stay, pre-approved hotels that we can stay. We never had to do that before. And there are places where we're allowed to go and places where we're not allowed to go. And we're required to check in every 6 hours or 8 hours or something like that. In other words, you're treated like a little child. And why? Why would you stay if you take away the only things that really make it bearable? He has purged the military of everybody who, well, not everybody, needless to say, there's still many, many people in there. But he has purged so many people, not by just cashiering them, but by making the environment so toxic to warrior values. It's so embarrassing that they're just gone. Bert Rutan was telling me about a general he heard talk who said he was so proud of the fact that his Air Force base was the greenest Air Force base in the entire U.S. military. Nothing about the readiness, it's just the greenest one. And the worst of this, the worst is that the experience that these men and women had is priceless. And I mean priceless. They left with priceless experience. They left with combat-hardened experience that we just do not and shouldn't have to pay for again. Paid for it large time a large hunk of money, but mostly we paid for it in lives. We learned how to do things like IEDs because we had to learn how to do it. And the people that learned how to do it are then forced to leave the military after you acquire that kind of experience. These people should have been promoted to the absolute limits of their abilities, and then they should have been able to instruct everybody else on what happens in actual combat. But no, these people were just basically just spit out. It's a catastrophe. So again, ask your friends, what did he actually accomplish? His only political achievement is Obamacare. What else did he do? Nothing. Obamacare is falling apart, and everybody hates it. So it's not like the Republicans are going to go in there and destroy a popular program. The program has failed. It failed from the beginning. What else has he done? Again, our foreign relations are much worse. Race relations are infinitely worse. Our economy has been as sluggish as it's ever been in our history, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. He's gone golfing. That's what he's done. So just dare them. Ask them. Ronald Reagan forced the Soviet Union to collapse. He outspent them. He figured out, we can outfight these guys. They got lots and lots of tanks, though. And our people are very precious. Or we can start on the Star Wars program, which they can't keep up with. They don't have the technology, and we'll end up spending 5% of GDP on it, and the Russians will spend 30% of GDP, and that's not sustainable. He basically bankrupted them. They knew they couldn't go there. They had to open up in order to compete with America, and that opening up was the death knell for the Soviets. So Ronald Reagan won the Cold War. Ronald Reagan made the 80s a period of astonishing economic growth. What has he done? He's not done anything. And by the way, the real limits, as I started the show with, the real limits of how bad Obama is will be seen in the first year of the Trump presidency by his absence. He will, in fact, of course, take credit for all of it. If only all these policies that I started in 2008 are finally coming to fruition. That's why we have 7% economic growth, because my policies have finally come to fruition. It's got nothing to do with the fact that this new president's just eliminated all these regulations and employees and taxes. So